So there are so many great things about wetlands. It seems like a weird time of year to actually be celebrating World Wetlands Day when outside it can be dark and dreary and cold, but worldwide there are wetlands and their importance is huge, and we're going to learn about that today and some of the things that live in them. So wetlands, water, and life are inseparable. And that's the World Wetlands theme for this year. And I want you to think about that as we continue through this presentation about how inseparable these three things are from each other. And one other note, ABCA is celebrating 75 years of conservation this year. So we just acknowledge that in our new logo, and we are the first conservation authority established in Ontario. So Nina, my friend, we're going to read you a comic, and we're just going to get things started on kind of a fun note. And Nina's going to be the duck. We have a penguin, and we also have, I'm going to call it a groundhog, because today is Groundhog Day. So we'll say these three creatures are part of our comic, and we are going to find out what they're saying in their community. Sorry guys, but our town is growing and we need more fields and water for crops. So we'll drain this wetland, and if you don't mind.
We do mind. This wetland is the only home we have.
This wetland also gives me irrigation, water for the dry season, and pasture for my cattle. And it's a good flood regulator and helps purify the water.
Think of the water that is used in town. You could restore the urban wetland you drained last year and recycle the town's wastewater.
But can I afford it? Oops.
Of course you can. The wetland will help you purify your wastewater. There would be more water for you to use and more habitat for wildlife.
People from town could use the water to grow more food and vegetables and even flowers. You could also get more fish. That sounds interesting. Let me calculate it. Yep, looks reasonable. Everyone benefits. We'll have more food and water and wildlife.
Long
live wetlands! Thanks, Nina, for your help in that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, as you can see from these creatures, everyone benefits from wetlands, and wetlands are inseparable. So here's a brief outline of what we're going to go through today in the quick time or the short time that we have. We have wetlands and freshwater. What are wetlands? Where are wetlands? Why they're wonderful. Some restoration projects happening in the Ausable Bayfield Conservation Watershed. And how can I help? Because that's a very important question to ask and try to answer as we go into 2021. So, wetlands and fresh water. Did you know that fresh water makes up a very small fraction of the Earth's water surface? In fact, about 75% of the Earth is covered in water. And of that water, 2.5% is fresh water. But not all of that is available to use. And so when we look at all the water in the world, only 1%, actually less than 1%, is available as usable fresh water on Earth. So intricately connected. And wetlands are important for fresh water. They help capture and store the rainwater, and in turn they replenish the groundwater. They regulate the water quantity and supply of water by releasing it at the right time, the right place, in the right amounts. And wetlands also improve water quality by removing and absorbing pollutants. This plant right beside me, you probably know what it is. And it's a cattail, and it's a cattail flower head that you see in the winter. Cattails are known for their tremendous ability for taking out pollutants from the water. Now, in the Ausable Bayfield Conservation Authority, we have, in our watershed, we have two different types of wetlands that are found here. In Ontario, we have broken them down into bogs, fens, marshes, and swamps. And that all depends on the water and the amount of water, the plants and the types of plants, and the soil, and the types of soil, I mean. So around here, you'll see marshes and swamps. We don't really see fens and bogs because they're more northern types of wetlands. So to look for these in your area, marshes will have lots of cattails around the edge, and you'll see lots of kind of herbaceous plants, we say. And herbaceous plants will produce seeds, and lots of seeds that will help replenish and grow more plants for the next year. And also, they tend to be perennial too. And that means like year after year, as long as the roots aren't disturbed, the roots will produce a new plant from the same spot. So there's differences though when you go over to the swamp. Do you see as many herbaceous plants or flowers? Not really. In swamps, they're really known for the amount of trees that are found there. And even in the summertime, the water actually may dry up within a swamp. And like wetlands do, is that it will gradually release it into the surrounding areas to allow moisture to plants and animals during a time that they might need it, like the summer. So be aware of marshes and swamps. And in the Ausable Bayfield Conservation Authority watershed, there are not as many as we used to have. Approximately 90% of our wetlands in the watershed are gone. And on this map, it shows the wetland areas in green. Now, right smack dab in the middle of the watershed is this green blob. And that's where Hay Swamp is. And Hay Swamp is and regulates the water and flooding for our watershed. It's one of the major, it's actually an ecosystem that helps reduce flooding. So that's pretty cool. That we don't have to pay for dams or any other structures. We have a natural wetland that actually helps to control flooding in the watershed. And I'm going to zoom in here to an area just north of the Ausable. It's in the Bayfield watershed. And in this map, you will see regulated wetlands are in blue. And for this area, we have geographic information systems and mapping techniques that we can actually get a percentage of an area that is covered in wetlands when we put all the pieces together. So we know that this area that's shown on the map in the white background is 2.1% wetlands. Not very much. We really do need more wetlands on the landscape. But can you think of some ways and reasons why we have lost wetlands? Over the years, wetlands have been lost. I've highlighted Huron and Perth and where they are in Ontario on this map. And for Huron, we've lost between 65 and 85% of the wetlands that were here. And when we come to Perth, it's even more. And you can even see some of those red areas where it could even be up to 100% of wetland loss in the mixed wood plains of southern Ontario. So that can be a tremendous loss to our ecosystem when we lose wetlands. And sometimes we don't know exactly how we are affected by the loss of wetlands until maybe there's a rainstorm, and then where does the water go? It just goes across the land or sits in puddles, or then we have issues with stormwater management. Invasive species can also threaten wetlands too, because once an invasive species, a species that takes over an area, gets into a wetland, they can take it over and create change, and then the wetland's not going to work the same. An example plant that you might see in a wetland that's beautiful and purple, it's called purple loosestrife, but it wasn't really originally from around here. And so when it's in our wetlands, it takes over, and then we see less and less of these beautiful cattails. Another plant would be Phrygmis. And Phrygmis is found a lot on the shorelines of Lake Huron and the edges of ditches. You might see them. The seed head of a Phrygmis plant kind of looks like a fox's tail. That's what I've heard it compared to. So we're already halfway through our presentation. We've talked about a lot of things to do with what the wetlands are and where they are in the watershed. Do you have wetlands close to where you live? Look for cattails if you're ever thinking about looking for a marsh. And if you're looking for a swamp, you remember what to look for? Look for trees and, of course, wetness on the ground in the springtime. But wetlands are wonderful for many reasons, and this is probably my favorite part, is that they keep us healthy. They provide clean drinking water for us. They support food for us. Did you know that rice, which is not traditionally grown here, but when we consider it worldwide, 3.5 billion people eat and use rice. That's a lot. And wetlands are important for biodiversity. And locally, wetlands are known as one of the most biodiverse ecosystems there is. Now, when I use that word biodiversity, I'm talking about all of the abundance and diversity, the different types of plants and animal creatures that are found in a wetland. And you might have seen some of these creatures I'm showing you right now. The last picture I showed you there was a dragonfly, one of my most favorite animals. Yes, a dragonfly is an animal. It's an insect. And this insect, it flies around in the summertime. And that's the adult stage. Well, right now, what do you think dragonflies look like? Where are the dragonflies? There's actually a migrator dragonfly. So a dragonfly that flies a little bit to a warmer area, and then it will come back in the spring. And the green darner dragonflies do that. Other dragonflies will overwinter under the ice in the water of the wetland. And that's their nymph stage. So they might come out of the water in the spring, which is supposed to be early, according to Wyerton Willie, that they'll come up out of the water, they'll crawl up on a cattail, and then burst open their exoskeleton, and out will emerge this flying insect. Well, it won't fly right away. The wings will be all furled or curled up, and then slowly in the sunshine and in the air or gentle breeze of spring, their wings will kind of dry out and extend, and then they'll be able to fly around. So wetlands really do have seasons, especially here in Ontario, where it's a little bit quiet in winter, but come spring, there'll be lots of life. So I'd encourage you to go for a hike and visit a wetland in the winter right now, and then compare it to sometime in the spring and the summer, and maybe even a fall visit to a wetland, and see how different it is. So let me highlight some really interesting restoration projects that the Ausable Bayfield Conservation Authority has been working on for a long time. I would say about 8 years, 8 to 10 years. Different wetlands projects have been happening in the watershed as we increase, and restore this important wetland ecosystem. So, as it says on the slide, if you build it, they will come. And you can imagine these different creatures living in these different spots in these wetlands, in this wetland that I show you here. And just to go over some of the creatures here, laser, we have a deer, we have a leopard frog, we have some mallard ducks. And this is kind of a relation of the dragonfly, and it's the damselfly. They're both kind of cousins in the insect world, look very similar. And then, oh, I forgot blue vervain is over here, another pretty wetland flower, not purple loosestrife. So, one really big wetland project, which also highlights agricultural practices that are good for water quality, is the project at Huron View. There's a 3-acre wetland restoration. So you can see in the picture that the fields are bare. There's nothing there. It had just been planted, tilled, and planted, harvested, then tilled. And you can see a little bit of a wet area that is right here. So we took advantage of that little wet area and made it a big wet area. So now we have this nice wet area, 60 meters long, and then the Bayfield River's right over here. And this is creating habitat for animals. It's creating a place for water to go when it rains. And there's so many benefits to wetlands. In the next picture, you'll see, oh, so now you can see change over time. And there's another restoration project, Hine Marsh. It's a 4-acre wetland restoration. It was a hayfield before. So you can see in the picture, the machinery were just starting to get started with the wetland, and it was just a hayfield. And there are some trees there. And now the wetland is got 21 different species of wetland plants, and the animals and the plants just continue to be a very diverse area for plants and animals to live and grow, as well as help control the amount of water that's coming off of the land, and then gradually releasing it during times of the year when it is dry. So I want to leave you with some things to think about. First of all, you have to go visit a wetland. And that's one of the things that you can do to help wetlands, is to know where they are, go visit them, see what they look like, stay on the trails so that you don't step on anything that doesn't want to be stepped on. Of course, nothing wants to be stepped on. Keep your dog on a leash when you go out for a walk, because sometimes and clean up after them, because their mess can end up in wetlands and in our rivers and streams. You can use lawn and garden fertilizers wisely. That's the one that's kind of hidden there. And make sure you just use less and use them at the right time if you're able to have a say with that. I know you're probably at a younger age, but something to consider. Planting, if you have the option to plant some trees or shrub species, that's a good idea. Especially now, it's the winter, it's time to plant for those gardens and for what you're going to do on the property this year. Maybe you want to build and put up a nesting box. There are all kinds of animals that will benefit from a nesting box. There's the wood ducks. If you put up a wood duck box, you actually might get a screech owl in there. They kind of use the same size hole, which is about 2 inches in diameter. Even some waterfowl nesting tubes are a good thing to put up in and near a wetland. Don't waste food. I just thought about that one today. How does wasting food affect wetlands? Well, wetlands have water in them. Food needs water to grow. So when you waste food, you're really wasting water. So think about that. Eat everything that's on your plate. And if you're not sure about something, just take a little bit of it, because then you're not wasting food. I don't know if you've heard of a rain barrel before, but I'd suggest putting a rain barrel underneath the downspout of an eaves trough so that it collects rainwater, and it will hold onto that rainwater until you take it out and you can water your garden plants with it. It's a really handy thing to have. Tell others about the importance of wetlands through, you can make pictures, draw pictures, make cards, you could do stories, and even a song about the wetland. Maybe I've inspired you today, or you get inspired from going to a wetland. And of course, when you're in the wetland, leave the flowers and other wild animals in those natural areas. Now, this I took out of the wetland in my backyard, so it really didn't go far, and it's going to make a mess, so I'm going to put it back outside as soon as this program is over. But this includes frogs, turtles, and other things that you might think, oh, that would be really interesting to have and look at and put in an aquarium at home. But those animals are part of that ecosystem, that habitat. And so it's best to have those, sorry about that, have those animals left behind so that they don't get removed from their ecosystem. Whoops, let's zip over to the last slide. So that's the end of my presentation.